Received pronunciation is the accent of Standard English in the United Kingdom, with a relationship to regional accents similar to the relationship in other European languages between the standard varieties and the regional forms. RP is defined in the Concise Oxford English Dictionary as the standard accent of English as spoken in the south of England, although it can be heard from native speakers throughout England and Wales.Peter Trudgill estimated in 1974 that 3% of people in Britain were RP speakers. RP enjoys high social prestige in Britain. It has thus been seen as the accent of those with power, money, and influence, though it has in recent times been perceived negatively by some as associated with undeserved privilege. Since the 1960s, a greater permissiveness towards regional English varieties has taken hold in education. The study of RP is concerned exclusively with pronunciation, whereas Standard English, the Queen's English, Oxford English, and BBC English are also concerned with matters such as grammar, vocabulary, and style. An individual using RP will typically speak Standard English, although the reverse is not necessarily true. History. The introduction of the term received pronunciation is usually credited to Daniel Jones. In the first edition of the English Pronouncing Dictionary, he named the accent public school pronunciation, but from the second edition in 1926, he wrote, "In what follows I call it received pronunciation, for want of a better term." Quote, However, the term had actually been used much earlier by Alexander Ellis in 1869 and P.S. Duponceau in 1818. According to Fowler's Modern English Usage, the correct term is the received pronunciation. The word received conveys its original meaning of accepted or approved, as in received wisdom. RP is often believed to be based on the accents of southern England, but it actually has most in common with the early modern English dialects of the East Midlands. This was the most populated and most prosperous area of England during the 14th and 15th centuries. By the end of the 15th century, Standard English was established in the City of London. A mixture of London speech with elements from East Midlands, Middlesex, and Essex became what is now known as received pronunciation. By the 1970s, an estimated 3% of British people were RP speakers. Alternative names. Some linguists have used the term RP while expressing reservations about its suitability. The Cambridge-published English Pronouncing Dictionary uses the phrase BBC pronunciation on the basis that the name received pronunciation is archaic, and that BBC News presenters no longer suggest high social class and privilege to the listeners. Other writers have also used the name BBC pronunciation. The phonetician Jack Winsor-Lewis frequently criticizes the name received pronunciation in his blog. He has called it invidious, a ridiculously archaic, parochial and question-begging term, and noted that American scholars find the term quite curious. He used the term General British in his 1970s publication of a Concise Pronouncing Dictionary of American and British English, and in subsequent publications. Beverly Collins and Angr used the term non-regional pronunciation for what is often otherwise called RP, and reserve the term received pronunciation for the upper-class speech of the 20th century. Received pronunciation has sometimes been called Oxford English, as it used to be the accent of most members of the University of Oxford. The Handbook of the International Phonetic Association uses the name Standard Southern British. Page 4 reads, Standard Southern British is the modern equivalent of what has been called received pronunciation. It is an accent of the southeast of England which operates as a prestige norm there and in other parts of the British Isles and beyond. Usage. Faced with the difficulty of defining RP, many writers have tried to distinguish between different subvarieties. Gimson proposed conservative, general, and advanced. Conservative RP refers to a traditional accent associated with older speakers with certain social backgrounds. General RP is often considered neutral regarding age, occupation or lifestyle of the speaker, and advanced RP refers to speech of a younger generation of speakers. Later editions use general, refined and regional. Wells refers to mainstream RP and URP. He suggests that Gimson's categories of conservative and advanced RP referred to the URP of the old and young respectively. However, Wells stated, it is difficult to separate stereotype from reality with URP. Writing on his blog in February 2013, Wells wrote, if only a very small percentage of English people speak RP, as Trudgill et al. Claim, then the percentage speaking URP is vanishingly small, and if I were redoing it today, I think I'd drop all mention of URP. Now, however, linguists say that RP can be roughly divided into conservative RP and contemporary RP. The modern style of RP is an accent often taught to non-native speakers learning British English. Non-RP Britons abroad may modify the pronunciation to something closer to received pronunciation to be better understood by people unfamiliar with the diversity of British accents. They may also modify the vocabulary and grammar to be closer to those of Standard English for the same reason. RP is used as the standard for English in most books on general phonology and phonetics, and is represented in the pronunciation schemes of most dictionaries published in the United Kingdom. In dictionaries, most English dictionaries published in Britain now give phonetically transcribed RP pronunciations for all words. Pronunciation dictionaries are a special class of dictionary giving a wide range of possible pronunciations. British pronunciation dictionaries are all based on RP, though not necessarily using the name. Daniel Jones transcribed RP pronunciations of a large number of words and names in his English Pronouncing Dictionary. This is still being published by Cambridge University Press, and is now edited by Peter Roach, the accent having been renamed BBC Pronunciation. Two other pronunciation dictionaries are in common use: the Longman Pronunciation Dictionary, compiled by John C. Wells, using the name Received Pronunciation, and the Oxford Dictionary of Pronunciation for Current English, compiled by Clive Upton. This represents an accent named BR which is based on RP, but is claimed to be representative of a wider group of speakers. An earlier pronunciation dictionary by J. Windsor Lewis gives both British and American pronunciations, using the term General British for the former and General American for the latter. Status. Traditionally, received pronunciation was the everyday speech in the families of Southern English persons whose menfolk been educated at the great public boarding schools, and which conveyed no information about that speaker's region of origin before attending the school. It is the business of educated people to speak so that no one may be able to tell in what county their childhood was passed. In the 19th century, some British prime ministers still spoke with some regional features, such as William Ewart Gladstone. For the 1970s onwards, attitudes towards received pronunciation have been changing slowly. The BBC's use of Yorkshire-born Wilfred Pickles during the Second World War is an earlier example of the use of non-RP accents, but even then Pickles modified his speech towards RP when reading the news. Although admired in some circles, RP is disliked in others. It is common in parts of Britain to regard it as a southeastern English accent rather than a non-regional one, and as a symbol of the southeast's political power in Britain. A 2007 survey found that residents of Scotland and Northern Ireland tend to dislike RP. It is shunned by some with left-wing political views, who may be proud of having an accent more typical of the working classes. The British band Chumbawamba recorded a song entitled RP, which is part of their album The Boy Bands Have One. Phonology. Consonants, nasals and liquids may be syllabic and unstressed syllables, while the IPA symbol is phonetically correct for the consonant in arrow in many accents of American and British English. Most published work on received pronunciation represents this phoneme as R. Voiceless plosives are aspirated at the beginning of a syllable, unless a completely unstressed vowel follows. Aspiration does not occur when per second proceeds in the same syllable, as in spot or stop. When a sonorant L, R with or J follows, this aspiration is indicated by partial devoicing of the sonorant. R is a fricative when devoiced. Syllable final P, T, T, and K may be either preceded by a glottal stop or, in the case of T, fully replaced by a glottal stop, especially before a syllabic nasal. The glottal stop may be realized as creaky voice, thus, an alternative phonetic transcription of attempt could be, as in other varieties of English, voiced plosives are partly or even fully devoiced at utterance boundaries or adjacent to voiceless consonants. The voicing distinction between voiced and voiceless sounds is reinforced by a number of other differences, with the result that the two of consonants can clearly be distinguished even in the presence of devoicing of voiced sounds. Aspiration of voiceless consonants syllable initially. Glottal reinforcement of voiceless consonants syllable finally. Lengthening of vowels before voiced consonants. As a result, some authors prefer to use the terms fortis and lenis in place of voiceless and voiced. However, the latter are traditional and in more frequent usage. The voiced dental fricative is more often a weak dental plosive. The sequence NTH is often realized as L has velarized allophone in the syllable rhyme. Per hour becomes voiced between voiced sounds. Vowels. Examples of short vowels: in kit, mirror and rabbit; input, e in dress and merry; in strut and curry; a in trap and marry; in lot and orange; e in ago and sofa. Examples of long vowels: I in fleece; u in goose; in nurse and furry; in north, force and thought; in father, bath and start. Long and short vowels. RP's long vowels are slightly diphthongized, especially the high vowels I and U, which are often narrowly transcribed in phonetic literature as diphthongs, and long and short are relative to each other. Because of phonological process affecting vowel length, short vowels in one context can be longer than long vowels in another context. For example, the long vowel I in reach, reti, may be shorter than the short vowel in the word ridge, rd. Week. Cited in Gimson, published durations of English vowels with a mean value of 17.2 CSEC for short vowels before voiced consonants, but a mean value of 16.5 CSEC for long vowels preceding voiceless consonants. Conversely, the short vowel a becomes longer if it is followed by a voiced consonant. Thus, bat is pronounced and bad is. In natural speech, the plosives t and d may be unreleased utterance finally, and voiced consonants partly or completely devoiced. Thus, distinction between these words would rest mostly on vowel length and the presence or absence of glottal reinforcement. In addition to such length distinctions, unstressed vowels are both shorter and more centralized than stressed ones. In unstressed syllables occurring before vowels and in final position, contrasts between long and short high vowels are neutralized and shortened occur. The neutralization is common throughout many English dialects, though the phonetic realization of e g rather than is not as universal. Unstressed vowels vary in quality. I ranges from close front to close mid retracted front. U ranges from close advanced back to close mid retracted central, according to the phonetician Jane Setter. The typical pronunciation of this vowel is a weakly rounded, mid-centralized close back unrounded vowel, transcribed in the IPAs as simply. E ranges from close mid-central to open mid-central. Diphthongs and triphthongs. The centering diphthongs are gradually being eliminated in RP. The vowel E had largely merged with by the Second World War, and the vowel E has more recently merged with as well among most speakers, although the sound E is still found in conservative speakers. See poor merger. The remaining two centering glides E are increasingly pronounced as long monophthongs, although without merging with any existing vowels. The diphthong E is pronounced by some RP speakers in a noticeably different way when it occurs before L, if that consonant is syllable final and not followed by a vowel. The realization of E in this case begins with a more back-rounded and sometimes more opened vowel quality. It may be transcribed as or. It is likely that the backness of the diphthong onset is the result of allophonic variation caused by the raising of the back of the tongue for the L. If the speaker has L vocalization, the L is realized as a back-rounded vowel, which again is likely to cause backing and rounding in a preceding vowel as co-articulation effects. This phenomenon has been discussed in several blogs by John C. Wells. It is possible, according to Wells, that a speaker with the pronunciation may pronounce the words holy and holy with different realizations of E, thus creating a phonological distinction. In the recording included in this article, the phrase "fold his cloak" contains examples of the E diphthong in the two different contexts. The onset of the pre-L diphthong in fold is slightly more back and rounded than that in cloak, though the allophonic transcription does not at present indicate this. RP also possesses the triphthongs A as in tar, A as in tower, E as in lower, E as in lair, and E as in loyal. There are different possible realizations of these items. In slow, careful speech they may be pronounced as a two-syllable triphthong with three distinct vowel qualities in succession, or as a monosyllabic triphthong. In more casual speech the middle vowel may be considerably reduced by a process known as smoothing, and in an extreme form of this process the triphthong may even be reduced to a single vowel, though this is rare, and almost never found in the case of E. In such a case the difference between A and in tower, tire, and tar may be neutralized with all three units realized as or. This type of smoothing is known as the tower-tire, tower-tar, and tire-tar merges. Bath vowel. There are differing opinions as regards whether A in the Bath lexical set can be considered RP. The pronunciations with are invariably accepted as RP. The English Pronouncing Dictionary does not admit A in Bath words, and the Longman Pronunciation Dictionary lists them with the section marker of non-RP status. John Wells wrote in a blog entry on the 16th of March 2012 that, when growing up in the north of England, he used in bath and glass, and considers this the only acceptable phoneme in RP. Others have argued that A is too categorical in the north of England to be excluded. Clive Upton believes that A in these words must be considered within RP and has called the opposing view south-centric. Upton's Oxford Dictionary of Pronunciation for Current English gives both variants for Bath words. AF Gutter's survey of mostly middle-class students found that a was used by almost everyone who was from clearly north of the isogloss for Bath words. She wrote, "There is no justification for the claims by Wells and Mugglestone that this is a sociolinguistic variable in the north, though it is a sociolinguistic variable on the areas on the border." In a study of speech in West Yorkshire, K.M. Petty wrote that the amount of usage is too low to correlate meaningfully with the usual factors, having found only 2 speakers who consistently used. Jack Windsor Lewis has noted that the Oxford Dictionary's position has changed several times on whether to include short a within its prescribed pronunciation. The BBC Pronouncing Dictionary of British Names uses only, but its author, Graham Poynton, has stated on his blog that he finds both variants to be acceptable in place names. Some research has concluded that many people in the north of England have a dislike of the vowel in Bath words. A.F. Gupta wrote, "Many of the northerners were noticeably hostile to rs, describing it as comical, snobbish, pompous or even for morons." On the subject, K.M. Petty wrote that several respondents positively said that they did not prefer the long vowel form, that they really detested it, or even that it was incorrect. Mark Newbrick has assigned this phenomenon the name conscious rejection, and has cited the Bath vowel as the main instance of conscious rejection of RP in his research in West Wirral. Alternative notation. Not all reference sources use the same system of transcription. In particular, a as in trap is also written a, e as in dress is also written, as in cup is also written, as in foot is also written, as in nurse is also written e, a as in price is also written, a as in mouse is also written, e as in square is also written e, and is also sometimes treated as a long monophthong. E as in face is also written, e as in near is also written, e before l in a closed syllable as in girl is also written, u as in goose is also written u. Most of these variants are used in the transcription devised by Clive Upton for the shorter Oxford English Dictionary and now used in many other Oxford University Press dictionaries. The linguist Jeff Lindsay has argued that the system of transcription for RP has become outdated and has proposed a new system as a replacement. Historical variation, like all accents, RP has changed with time. For example, sound recordings and films from the first half of the 20th century demonstrate that it was usual for speakers of RP to pronounce the a sound, as in land, with a vowel close to, so that land would sound similar to a present-day pronunciation of lend. RP is sometimes known as the Queen's English, but recordings show that even Queen Elizabeth II has changed her pronunciation over the past 50 years, no longer using a like vowel in words like land. Some changes in RP during the 20th century include words such as cloth, gone off, often were pronounced with instead of, so that often and orphan was homophones. The Queen still uses the older pronunciations, but it is rare to hear them on the BBC anymore. There was a distinction between horse and horse with an extra diphthong e, appearing in words like horse, force, and paw. Any final y on a word is now represented as an I, a symbol to cover either the traditional or the more modern I, the latter of which has been common in the south of England for some time. Before the Second World War, the vowel of cup was a back vowel close to cardinal, but has since shifted forward to a central position so that is more accurate phonetic transcription of this vowel as is common partly for historical reasons. In the 1960s the transcription e started to be used for the goat vowel instead of Daniel Jones's o, reflecting a change in pronunciation since the beginning of the century. The change in RP may be observed in the home of BBC English. The BBC accent of the 1950s is distinctly different from today's. A news report from the 1950s is recognizable as such, and a mock 1950s BBC voice is used for comic effect in programs wishing to satirize 1950s social attitudes such as The Harry Enfield Show and its Mr. Chumley Warner sketches. More recently, in speakers born between 1981 and 1993, the vowel shifted up, approaching in quality. The vowels and U have undergone fronting and reduction in the amount of lip rounding, while A has become more open. Comparison with other varieties of English. Like most other varieties of English outside Northern England, RP has undergone the foot strut split. Pairs like put, putty pronounced differently. RP is a non-rhotic accent, so R does not occur unless followed immediately by a vowel. Pairs such as father, father, pawn, pawn, court, court, and formerly are homophones. RP has undergone the Y and wine merger, so the sequence HW is not present except among those who have acquired this distinction as the result of speech training. The Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, based in London, still teaches these two sounds as distinct phonemes. They are also distinct from one another in most of Scotland and Ireland, in the northeast of England, and in the southeastern United States. Unlike many other varieties of English language in England, there is no H dropping in words like head, a horse. Unlike most Southern Hemisphere English accents, RP has not undergone the weak vowel merger, meaning that pairs such as Lennon are distinct. Unlike most North American accents of English, RP has not undergone the Mary, nearer, mirror, or hurry, furry mergers. All these words are distinct from each other. Unlike many North American accents, RP has not undergone the father, bother, chord mergers. RP does not have y dropping after N, T, D, Z, and theta, but some British people have y dropping after per second and L. Hence, for example, new, tune, June, resume, and enthusiasm are pronounced NJU, TJUN, DJUN, RZJUM, and N theta enthusiasm, rather than new, to N, do N, RZUM, and N theta enthusiasm. This contrasts with many East Anglian and East Midland varieties of English language in England, and with many forms of American English, including General American. In words such as pursuit and evolution, both pronunciations are heard in RP. There are, however, several words where a yod has been lost with the passage of time. For example, the word suit originally had a yod in RP, but this is now extremely rare. The flapped variant of T and D is not used very often. In traditional RP is an allophone of R. Spoken specimen. The Journal of the International Phonetic Association regularly publishes illustrations of the IPA which present an outline of the phonetics of a particular language or accent. It is usual to base the description on a recording of the traditional story of the North Wind and the Sun. There is an IPA illustration of British English. The audio recording on which the transcriptions are based may be heard here. The speaker is described as having been born in 1953 and educated at Oxford University. To accompany the recording there are 3 transcriptions: orthographic, phonemic, and allophonic. Notable speakers: John C. Wells, a notable British phonetician, has identified the following people as RP speakers: the British royal family, David Cameron, a former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, British Foreign Secretary, Rowan Williams, a former Archbishop of Canterbury, David Attenborough, broadcaster and naturalist, Rupert Everett, actor, Chris Huhne, a former Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, Justin Welby, Archbishop of Canterbury, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Member of Parliament. Bibliography.